Owen, what are your group's biggest discussion topics at the moment?
Biggest discussion topics right now have tended to be around LED technology. Advancements in LED technology over the last few years have been so fast, and obviously since the pixel pitch came down from the early outdoor screen sizes to the pitch size that can be used indoor, and the quality is good enough, and the support for the products there, that's become an incredibly interesting sector of the market. For the first few years, obviously price point was probably a bit high for most people, but as the price point came down and adoption started to go up, understanding the different types of LED technology on the market and the different manufacturer offerings, that's been a really hot topic for the past couple of years. Data analytics, that's obviously another big one. Many products on the market over the past 4 or 5 years that have the capability to collect the data, but there's not a lot of people doing anything with that data, and there's a huge amount of value in the data that's being collected. So one of the big topics right now is how can the end users use and manipulate that data to work out their workspace design, their AV strategy, how many systems should they be building, what types of systems, because that data can help them understand the current usage of their offerings.
It's funny you should say that. I was talking to Bloomberg yesterday, actually, on the stand, and he was thought they've been hiring data scientists and other specialists to bring into their team.
Yeah.
I know their IT and AV is more or less one now, but they do differentiate the specialisms into multi-talented teams, and they've groomed them themselves and actually send them around the company. And I'd never heard of the data. Many years ago in IT, we'd heard of data science, but not in AV. I thought it's quite an interesting development.
It is.
Where do you get them from? I asked.
Yeah, it's actually a huge opportunity in the market right now because, as I just said, there's so many products, whether it's hardware or software, that's collecting data. You just look at a lot of the management platforms, particularly the control system companies develop first, but then most of the display manufacturers now have a management platform of their own. All of those systems are collecting data, and there's an opportunity to use that data to the advantage of the end user. And so there's a huge opportunity in the market right now in that particular area.
It's all about using data and AV intelligently, isn't it? And it's gone beyond the product to act, and you start to test the functionality to see if it can deliver, and then you think in a bigger environment, how you can mix and blend. A lot of talking about ecosystems, for example.
Yes.
You've got quite a mixture of users from all over the place, haven't you, really, who are looking at, in a way, from a corporate element, which is where all these ecosystems seem to be developing. Yes. The question of managing all the functionality coming out of them, but also from an interoperability element. Do they work well together?
That's the other big discussion point that's never gone away. One of the biggest challenges that end users have in the AV market is a lack of interoperability, a lack of real standards. There still seems to be in our industry a need for manufacturers to differentiate their products to try and keep an edge on the market over their competitors. And they haven't quite got the concept that they have in the IT world, that actually if you all work within interoperable standards, you actually sell a lot more product. And it hasn't quite clicked yet with the AV world. And you go right back to the early days of video conferencing, we never had pure interoperability between all of the platforms. There were always challenges, whether it was with address books or with data sharing. Yes, the pure video element itself would connect and work, but all of the other elements that went with it that were important to make it easy to use, they never interoperated very well. And we still deal with that today. You just look at all of the systems running AV over IP, there's not true interoperability between all of those platforms. They're all working to slightly different standards. That's very frustrating for end users.
Well, we get a session on that later on. I'm sure you'll be in the middle of something, won't we? But it's a question of there does seem to be a standard, as you say, but when you start making the chips, we've developed a chip now, haven't they? Yeah. They've still got the problem of what to do with the video. Yeah. Everything else seems to be fudged and works adequately, but it's that video still in the middle of it all that people have a bit of a quandary and don't know quite how to interoperate with. It needs such specific requirements.
Yes.
But the interesting point is LEDs versus projection.
Yes.
We try to tackle it by having combinations of the two. We had conversations yesterday about how each has come on and whether one is replacing the other. I don't think it's quite as simple an argument as that.
No.
And it's difficult to know where each is going for the average end user to know where to invest.
Yes.
Should they be looking at LED or should they be concentrating more on projection, which is becoming more versatile?
Absolutely.
And suiting more applications, so it's difficult to know which way to work.
It's always going to be down to the unique application that each end user has ultimately, and to a certain extent the available budget that they have for whatever project it's being deployed on. LED is still quite high price point and not everybody can afford it, and video projection is still a great alternative. I don't think we're ever going to see it disappear completely, and of course it has some unique applications in projection mapping, for example. So we're always going to see video projection developing in specialist areas like that. But as LED is advancing so quickly and the manufacturing costs are coming down and the price points coming down, obviously it's taking a huge share of that market. And particularly where we used to see rear projection systems, which were very popular in the corporate enterprise environment. If you're using LED, you save on that square footage of the rear projection space, and you know what the square footage costs are in the major cities where all these companies' headquarters are. That's a huge cost saving to them. So that helps balance the cost of the actual LED screens themselves. So they've become very, very popular in those environments already.
And of course they're the two perennial chestnuts of skills development and talent acquisition, which seem to be dominating the headlines at the moment.
Yes.
In terms of your members, what do they think about, well, we did this cover story, didn't we, which you contributed to, about do they have an overall view about whether more needs to be done about skills development, and what are they doing to potentially look for new talent, especially in areas like data acquisition and analysis, which are relatively new to AV?
There's a number of things going on, obviously. Our industry is fortunate enough to be growing at an incredible rate. We have an incredibly successful industry, which means there are more and more and more job opportunities. So yes, we have a skills shortage, and yes, we have a need for these training programs and apprenticeships and so on. But I think fundamentally, as I said to you when you asked me to contribute to that piece, the bit that we're really missing is the audiovisual market marketing itself successfully to the outside world. So there's not enough people outside of AV that understand the enormous opportunities that we have. And as you know, they're incredibly varied. From the production side of the industry to the pure technical side, sales, business development, the opportunities are incredibly varied. And many of them have quite a good entry point from a salary perspective. We're certainly not bottom of the scale from entry salaries. And I think it's a very attractive industry. We just don't do a good enough job of marketing it. I have to say it's nice to see Avixa starting to do more in that area. I saw their little promotional video at the end of last year, which I actually thought was fantastic. A very short video, but they kind of really capture the essence of our industry in there with all the different facets. So that's really, really nice to see, and we need so much more of that, so that younger kids and students are actually aware of our industry and are attracted to come in. But then obviously we've got to have the training and the apprenticeships to skill them up so that they're then of value to us.